Beneath twin moons that hung like cracked pearls in a bruised sky, Ilara moved through the ruins with the silence of falling dust. Her bare feet left no prints in the ash that coated the ground, thick and gray from centuries of forgotten fires. The wind carried whispers, not of voices but of what once was, stone towers that had sung with light, gardens that bloomed with silver petals, and songs hummed in a tongue no human throat could shape. Now only silence remained, and Ilara and the small dragon coiled close to her side. Beer was no larger than a hunting hound, but his presence filled the emptiness like thunder before rain. His scales were black as charred bone, shimmering faintly when the moons caught them just right. His eyes, wide and golden, never left Ilara. He did not need to speak. Their bond ran deeper than words, woven from shared loss and the quiet understanding that they were all each other had left. Ilara was not human. Her skin held the cool sheen of polished moonstone. Her hair fell in strands like spun smoke, and her ears tapered to delicate points that twitched at every shift in the air. She wore a tattered cloak stitched from the wings of sky serpents long extinct, its edges frayed but still strong. Around her neck hung a pendant, a single shard of crystal that pulsed faintly like a sleeping heart. It was the last piece of her home, the last echo of a civilization that had vanished not with a scream, but with a sigh. She had walked this dead world for longer than most humans lived. Time meant little to her kind, but loneliness had sharpened its edges. She remembered laughter once. She remembered warmth. Now she remembered only duty, to guard what remained, to keep the silence sacred, and to ensure no outsider disturbed the bones of her ancestors. So when the sky split open 3 nights past, she had not been surprised, only wary. A ship, jagged and scarred, had torn through the upper clouds like a blade through silk. It did not land with grace. It crashed, coughing smoke and fire, into the basin beyond the shattered ridge. Ilara watched from the high cliffs, Vyre perched on her shoulder, his claws gentle against her collarbone. She expected scavengers, raiders, the usual vermin drawn to dead places by rumor and greed. But the beings who emerged from the wreckage were different. They wore patched uniforms of faded blue and gray, their faces smudged with soot but their eyes clear. They moved with purpose, not panic. They did not loot. They did not shout. They set up a small camp, lit a single lantern, and began repairing their vessel with quiet efficiency. One of them stood apart, taller than the others, broader in the shoulders, with short dark hair and hands that moved like they knew every bolt and wire by memory. He said little, but his gaze swept the horizon like he was searching for something, or someone. Ilara waited. She watched. For 2 days she let them work, hidden among the ruins like a ghost. Vyre grew restless, his tail flicking, his breath warm against her neck. He sensed something she could not name. Danger, perhaps, or something older. On the 3rd night she descended. She came not with weapons drawn, but with presence. She stepped from the shadow of a broken arch, her cloak catching the moonlight, her eyes gleaming like distant stars. The humans froze. One dropped a wrench. Another reached for a sidearm but stopped when the tall man raised a single hand. Ilara stopped 10 paces from their fire. The air grew still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "Kneel, human," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried like a bell through stone. It was not a request. It was a command carved from centuries of sovereignty, from bloodlines that had ruled galaxies before Earth had oceans. The humans looked to their leader. He stood slowly, brushing ash from his knees. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not speak. He simply looked at her and smiled. That smile unraveled something deep inside her. It was not mocking. It was not fearful. It was knowing. As if he had expected her. As if he had been waiting. Vyre hissed, low and sharp, his wings flaring slightly. Ilara did not move, but her fingers tightened around the crystal at her throat. The pendant grew warm. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice softer now, edged with something unfamiliar. Curiosity, perhaps, or the first crack in a wall long sealed. The man stepped forward, stopping just outside the firelight. "My name is Dale," he said. "We mean no harm." "Harm is not always carried in hands," she replied. "Sometimes it walks in silence, wearing the face of peace." Dale nodded as if he understood. "We crashed. Our engines failed near the outer rim. We saw this planet on old charts marked as uninhabited. We only needed to repair and leave." Ilara studied him. His eyes were gray, like storm clouds over calm water. There was no lie in them, but there was something else. Something buried deep, like a memory he dared not speak. Why did you come here, really? She asked. Dale hesitated. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it slowly, revealing a shard of metal etched with symbols that made Ilara's breath catch. The symbols were elvish, ancient, forbidden. Where did you get that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. From my grandfather, Dale said. He was a pilot during the last Great Silence. He said if I ever found a world with twin moons and black ash, I should look for a woman with silver eyes. He said she would know what this means. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. The last Great Silence was not a war name. It was a secret. A code known only to those who had fought in the Shadow War. The war before time when the Voidwalkers came and nearly unmade all life. Her people had allied with humans then. Though history had erased it, the alliance had been broken, the records burned, the truth buried beneath layers of myth. And yet here stood a human holding a relic of that pact, speaking words no outsider should know. Fire crept closer to her leg, his body tense. She placed a hand on his head, calming him, though her own mind raced. You lie, she said, but the words lacked conviction. Dale shook his head. I don't. My family has guarded this for generations. We were told to find you, to wait, to be ready. Ready for what? She asked. For when the hunters return. At that moment, a low hum vibrated through the ground. Far to the east, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with ships. Not human. Not elvish. Jagged, organic shapes that pulsed with sickly green light. They moved without sound, gliding like predators through the upper atmosphere. Ilara's blood turned to ice. She knew those ships. She had seen them in nightmares. The hunters. They had found her. Dale turned, his face hardening. How many? He asked. 3. Maybe more, she said. They always come in threes. Can your people fight them? He asked. I have no people, she said softly. Only Vire, only me. Dale looked at her, then at the approaching ships, then back at her. Then he did something no human had ever done. He knelt. Not in submission, but in solidarity. Then you're not alone anymore, he said. Ilara stared at him, the weight of centuries pressing on her chest. She had spent lifetimes believing humans were short-lived, chaotic, forgetful. Yet here was one who remembered, who honored a vow made before his bloodline had a name. Vire nudged her hand, his golden eyes wide with urgency. The ships were descending. She made her choice. Rise, she said to Dale, and show me what your kind can do. He stood brushing dust from his knees and turned to his crew. Get the weapons ready. Seal the hull. We're not leaving yet. As the human scrambled, Ilara closed her eyes and pressed the crystal to her forehead. It flared with soft blue light. Deep beneath the ruins, something ancient stirred. Old defenses, long dormant, began to wake. The hunters thought they came for a lone elf and her pet. They did not know the human had been waiting. They did not know the war had never truly ended. And they did not know that Ilara, for the first time in centuries, felt something other than sorrow. She felt hope. The night stretched long after the hunters' ships vanished into the upper clouds, leaving behind only a faint hum that clung to the air like static. Ilara stood at the edge of the camp, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon where the sky still pulsed with unnatural green. Fire lay coiled at her feet, his breath slow but alert, his golden eyes tracking every shift in the wind. Behind them, the humans worked in quiet urgency, patching hull breaches, checking power cells, speaking in low tones that never rose above a whisper. They moved like soldiers who had seen too much but said too little. Dale approached her slowly, hands open at his sides, his boots crunching softly on the ash. He did not speak at first. He simply stood beside her, gazing out at the same dark line where the world met the void. The silence between them was not empty. It was heavy with things unsaid, with memories neither fully understood but both somehow shared. You knew they would come, he said at last. Not knew, she replied. Feared. They always return when the veil thins, and it is thinning now. What veil? He asked. The one between what is real and what was erased. Your people called it the Great Forgetting. Mine called it the Silence Pact, both names for the same lie. Dale frowned. We were taught the Silence Pact was a myth, a story to explain why old records from the early expansion era are blank. It was no myth, she said. It was a wound, and someone stitched it shut with lies. Fire lifted his head and let out a soft chuff, his gaze fixed on Dale. The dragon did not trust easily, yet he had not hissed or flared his wings since Dale knelt. That alone told Alara something she did not want to admit, that this human carried a truth older than his bones. "Come," she said suddenly, "before they return." She turned and walked toward the ruins, not waiting to see if he followed. She knew he would. Fire rose and padded after her, his claws clicking against broken stone. Dale fell into step behind them, his presence steady, quiet like a shadow that chose to stay. They passed through archways that once led to libraries filled with living light, now choked with vines of black moss. They crossed courtyards where fountains once sang with liquid starlight, now dry and cracked. Alara led them deep into the heart of the city, to a place even the wind avoided. There, hidden beneath a slab of obsidian carved with spiraling runes, was a stairwell that spiraled down into darkness. Dale paused at the edge. "How far does it go?" he asked. "Far enough," she said, "to where the truth sleeps." She descended without hesitation. Fire followed, his scales brushing the walls, leaving faint trails of warmth. Dale took a small light from his belt and clicked it on. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing walls lined with murals, faded but still vivid. Humans and elves stood side by side, their hands clasped, their faces turned toward a common enemy. Ships of strange design flew in formation, human steel fused with elvish crystal. In one panel, a woman who looked like Alara placed a hand on the shoulder of a man who looked eerily like Dale. "That cannot be," Dale whispered. "It is," she said. "Time folds more than it flows. Your blood remembers, mine does not forget." At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a chamber lit by soft blue veins in the stone. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it rested a sphere of clear crystal swirling with mist. As Alara stepped closer, the mist parted, revealing images, fleeting, fragmented, but clear enough to sting. She saw herself younger, standing on a battlefield under a red sun. Beside her stood a human commander, his face scarred, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. They fought together against creatures of smoke and teeth, beings that fed on memory itself. They won, but at a cost. The victors, fearing what unity might bring, erased the alliance. They scattered the records. They silenced the songs. They made sure no one would ever trust the other again. Alara staggered back, her breath catching. The vision faded, but the ache remained. "You were there," she said, turning to Dale. "Not you, but your line. Your blood." "My grandfather spoke of dreams," Dale said slowly. "Dreams of a silver-eyed woman and a black dragon. He said they saved him once during the Void incursion near Proxima. He always said it was real, even when the council called him mad." "It was real," she said, "and they are coming back. The Void Walkers. The Hunters. They feed on division. They grow strong when we forget each other." Fear nudged her hand, his eyes glowing brighter. He remembered too. Not in images, but in instinct. In the way his fire burned hotter when humans were near. In the way his scales shimmered when elvish words were spoken. Dale stepped closer to the pedestal. "What do we do?" "We remember," she said, "and we prepare." Over the next days, the camp changed. The humans no longer acted like stranded travelers. They became something else, something older. They studied the murals, copied the runes, tested old weapons found in the ruins. Dale worked alongside Alara, learning the patterns of elvish tech, how their energy flowed not through wires but through resonance. She taught him to listen to the stone, to feel the pulse of the planet beneath their feet. He taught her how human minds saw patterns in chaos, how they built solutions from scraps. They did not speak of trust. They showed it. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Dale sat by the fire, sharpening a blade. Alara watched him from a distance, Vire curled at her feet. She noticed how his hands moved, steady, precise, like they had done this 1,000 times. She noticed the scar on his forearm, the way he glanced at the sky every few minutes, not with fear, but with readiness. "Why did you really come here?" she asked, stepping into the firelight. He looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers. "Because the dreams got louder. Because every ship that passed this sector reported strange energy readings. Because my grandfather's last words were, 'Find her before they do.'" She sat across from him, the fire casting long shadows. "And if I had not appeared, if I had let you die in the crash, then I would have failed," he said simply. "But I knew you would come, I felt it, like a pull in my bones." She looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of her pendant. "I have spent lifetimes alone. I believed it was safer. That connection was weakness." "Connection is survival," he said. "Your people knew that once. So did mine. We just forgot how to hold on." Vyre lifted his head and let out a low, rumbling purr. It was the closest he ever came to agreement. That night, Alara dreamed. She saw the hunters descending in force, their ships blotting out the stars. She saw cities burning, not with fire, but with silence. People forgetting their names, their loves, their reasons to fight. And in the center of it all stood Dale, holding the metal shard, shouting a name she could not hear. She woke gasping, her skin cold, her heart racing. Dale was already awake, standing guard at the ridge. She joined him without a word. "They will return soon," she said. "I know," he replied. "Are you afraid?" He looked at her, then at the sky. "Only of failing you." She did not answer, but for the first time she stood close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. In the days that followed, they trained. Alara showed Dale how to channel resonance through his body, how to disrupt the hunter's mind weapons with focused thought. He taught her how to use human rifles, how to read tactical maps, how to fight in tight spaces. Vyre learned to breathe not just fire, but pulses of memory, flashes of courage, of loyalty, of moments when humans and elves stood as one. His flames could now ignite not destruction, but remembrance. The bond between them grew not in words but in shared silence, in the way they moved around each other without collision, in the way they anticipated each other's needs before they were spoken. One afternoon, while testing a shield generator salvaged from the ruins, Dale asked a question that had been burning in him. "Why did they erase us from your history?" "Because unity threatened their power," she said. "The elders feared that if our people saw how strong we were together, they would question the old ways. So they made humans the enemy. They called you short-lived, reckless, chaotic. They said you would burn the stars if given the chance." "And what do you think now?" he asked. "I think," she said slowly, "that you burn brighter than most stars, and you do not burn alone." He smiled just a little. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "Do not mistake truth for flattery," she said. But there was no sharpness in her voice. As the days passed, the hum in the sky grew louder. The green pulses returned closer each time. The hunters were circling, testing, waiting for weakness. Alara knew they could not win with force alone. The hunters were not just enemies. They were echoes of the silence itself, manifestations of forgotten bonds, of severed trust. To defeat them, they needed more than weapons. They needed the blood pact. It was an ancient vow, spoken only in times of true alliance. It required one human and one elf to stand together, not as master and servant, not as strangers, but as equals. It would bind their fates, their memories, their very essence. It was dangerous. If one fell, the other would feel it like a wound in the soul. Dale listened without interrupting as she explained. "And if we do this," he asked, "what happens?" "We become more than we were," she said. "We become a bridge. And bridges can carry armies." He looked at Vyre, then at her. Then he nodded. "I'm ready." "Not yet," she said. "The pact must be spoken under the twin moons, at the hour when the veil is thinnest. Tonight." That evening, they stood at the center of the ruined plaza, the same place where Alara had first commanded him to kneel. The moons hung low, their light mingling into a soft silver glow. Viri. The sky tore open at dawn, not with thunder, not with fire, but with silence so deep it swallowed sound itself. 3 ships descended, jagged, organic things that pulsed like living wounds against the pale morning. They did not land. They hovered, casting long shadows that moved against the wind as if time itself bent around them. From their bellies, figures emerged, tall, slender, faceless, their limbs too long, their movements too smooth. They wore armor that shifted color like oil on water, and in their hands they carried rods that hummed with stolen memory. The hunters had come. Alara stood at the edge of the ruined plaza, her cloak drawn tight, her silver eyes fixed on the invaders. Beside her, Dale checked the charge on his rifle, his jaw set, his breath steady. Behind them, the human crew formed a loose line, weapons raised, faces grim but resolute. Fear crouched low on the stone, his obsidian scales drinking in the dim light, his golden eyes narrowed to slits. "They do not fight with bullets," Alara said softly. "They fight with forgetting. If they touch you, you will lose yourself. Your name. Your reason to stand? Then we do not let them touch us," Dale replied. The first hunter stepped forward, its rod lifting. The air around it warped, and a wave of silence rolled outward. Stones cracked, plants withered. One of the human soldiers gasped, dropped his weapon, and clutched his head as if his thoughts were being pulled out through his ears. Ilara raised her hand. The ground beneath the hunter erupted in blue flame, not fire but pure resonance. The creature staggered back, its form flickering like a bad signal, but it did not fall. "They are stronger than before," she said. "Because we forgot them," Dale said. "Now we remember." He raised his rifle and fired. The shot struck the hunter's chest, but passed through like smoke. The creature did not bleed. It did not flinch. It simply turned its blank face toward him. "Dale, move!" Ilara shouted. He dove sideways as the rod swept the air where he had stood. Where the tip passed, the stone floor turned gray and brittle, crumbling into dust. Memory rot. The hunters did not kill bodies. They killed meaning. Buyer leapt. His wings snapped open mid-air, and from his throat came not flame, but a pulse of golden light, a burst of pure recollection. The nearest hunter screamed, a sound like glass breaking underwater, and clutched its head. For a moment its form wavered, and beneath the shifting armor, something human flickered. A face, a uniform, eyes wide with terror. Then it vanished, and the hunter collapsed into ash. "They were once people," Ilara whispered. "What?" Dale asked, reloading. "The forgotten. Those who fell in the last war and were erased. The hunters wear their shells. They feed on the silence we left behind." Dale's hands tightened on his rifle. "Then we give them back their names." He turned to his crew. "Fall back to the inner ring. Use the old trenches. They cannot take what they cannot reach." The humans retreated in order, covering each other, their movements sharp and practiced. Ilara and Dale held the line step by step as the hunters advanced. Fire circled above, diving in bursts, unleashing pulses of memory, flashes of home, of love, of promises kept. Each pulse weakened the hunters, made their forms unstable. But there were too many. More ships appeared on the horizon. Not 3 now, but 7. The sky darkened. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and decay. "We cannot hold them here," Ilara said. "Then we do not hold," Dale said. "We lead." He pointed to a narrow passage between 2 collapsed towers, the way to the lower vaults where the old defenses slept. Ilara nodded. She turned and ran, Fire at her heels. Dale followed, shouting orders behind him. The hunters pursued, gliding rather than running, their rods carving paths of emptiness through the ruins. Stone turned to powder. Metal rusted in seconds. Even the air grew thin, as if the very concept of breath was being unraveled. In the vault entrance, Ilara placed her hands on the sealed door. The runes flared blue under her touch. The stone groaned and split open, revealing a stairwell spiraling down into darkness. "Go," she said to Dale. He hesitated. "You next." She shook her head. "I must hold the threshold." He looked at her, then at the approaching hunters. Then he did something unexpected. He took her hand. "Not alone," he said. Before she could argue, he pulled her through the doorway. Fire slipped in after them. The moment they crossed the threshold, Ilara slammed her palm against a hidden sigil on the wall. The door sealed shut with a sound like a heartbeat. Silence. For a moment, only their breathing filled the space. The vault was cold, dry, lit by faint veins of blue crystal in the walls. Ahead, the corridor sloped downward, lined with alcoves holding weapons that had not been touched in centuries. Spears of light, bows that fired sound, shields woven from starlight. Dale leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "They will find another way in." "Not easily," she said. "This place is shielded by memory locks. Only those who remember the pact can pass." He looked at her. "And if they break through, then we meet them at the core." They moved deeper, their footsteps echoing softly. Fire stayed close to Ilara, his body tense, his eyes scanning the shadows. Dale kept his rifle ready, but his mind was elsewhere. "Why did they choose you?" he asked suddenly. "Who?" "The hunters. Why come here for you?" "Because I am the last keeper of the blood vow," she said. "As long as I live, the pact is not broken. As long as the pact lives, they cannot consume this world. And if you die, then silence wins." He stopped walking, looked at her. "That is not happening." She met his gaze. "You cannot promise that. I can try." Before she could reply, the wall behind them shuddered. A crack appeared, thin and black, spreading like a spider's web. Through it seeped a green mist, cold and wrong. "They found a way," Dale said. Ilara drew a slender blade from her belt, its edge shimmering with trapped starlight. "Then we do not wait for them." She turned and ran back up the corridor, not away, but toward the breach. Dale cursed under his breath and followed, Fire let out a warning hiss and launched himself ahead. Wings flared. At the crack, a hunter's hand reached through, long fingers ending in sharp points. Alara did not hesitate. She drove her blade into the wrist. The creature shrieked and black ichor oozed out, sizzling where it touched the stone. Dale fired 3 shots into the crack. The wall exploded inward and 2 hunters tumbled into the corridor. Fire met them mid-air, his jaws closing around one's neck, his claws raking the other's chest. Golden light flared and the first hunter dissolved. The second raised its rod. Alara lunged. She did not strike the body. She struck the rod. Her blade met the humming device and a shockwave of memory erupted. Images of 1,000 battles, 1,000,000 voices crying out in unity. The rod shattered. The hunter froze, its form flickering wildly. For a moment it looked like a young woman in a human uniform, her eyes wide with recognition. "Thank you," it whispered, then turned to dust. Silence returned. Dale lowered his rifle, his chest heaving. That was too close. Alara knelt, picking up a shard of the broken rod. It was warm, alive. She closed her fist around it. "They are weakening," she said. "The pact is working, but more will come," Dale said. "Then we go to the heart," she said. "To the mirror gate." He frowned. "I thought that was just a story." "Stories are memories wearing masks," she said. "And the gate is real." They pressed on, deeper into the earth, past chambers filled with sleeping machines, past walls etched with names: Luna, Maya, Claire, Noelle, human and elf, side by side. The air grew warmer, humming with energy. Fire's scales began to glow faintly, responding to the power below. Finally, they reached a vast chamber. In its center stood a ring of standing stones, each carved with the same spiraling runes. Between them hovered a disk of liquid light, the mirror gate. It swirled slowly, showing not reflections but possibilities. Worlds where the pact held, worlds where it broke, worlds where humans and elves never met. "This is it," Alara said. "The place where choices become fate." Dale stepped closer. "What does it do?" "It can restore what was lost," she said, "or erase what remains. It answers to blood and memory, but it demands a price." "What price?" "One must stay, to anchor the gate, to hold the balance." He looked at her. "And you plan to stay?" "I always have," she said. "No," he said firmly, "not this time." Before she could argue, the ceiling above them cracked. Stone rained down. Hunters poured through the opening more than before, their rods blazing with stolen time. They moved as one, surrounding the gate, cutting off escape. Alara raised her blade. Dale raised his rifle. Fire spread his wings wide, his body glowing brighter than ever. They stood back to back, human and elf and dragon, the last defenders of a forgotten vow. The hunters advanced, and the gate began to hum. The chamber trembled as the hunters closed in, their rods casting long shadows that moved like living things. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of ozone and something older, something like rusted time. Alara stood with her blade raised, its edge humming in response to the gate's growing energy. Dale kept his rifle steady, his eyes scanning the circle of faceless figures. Fire crouched low, his wings half spread, his body glowing with a soft golden light that pushed back the green mist curling from the hunter's armor. "They cannot be allowed to reach the gate," Alara said. "They are not here for the gate," Dale replied. "They are here for you." She glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "The gate answers to blood and memory. You are the last of your line. If they take you, they take the key. They do not need to destroy it. They just need to silence you." Fire let out a low growl, his eyes fixed on the nearest hunter. The creature tilted its head, as if listening to something only it could hear. Then, without warning, it lunged. Alara met it mid-stride. Her blade slashed through its rod, shattering it into sparks that hissed as they hit the floor. The hunter staggered, its form flickering, revealing for a heartbeat the face of a young man in a torn flight suit, his mouth open in a silent scream. Then it collapsed into dust. Dale fired twice, dropping another hunter before it could raise its weapon. But more poured in from the ceiling, their movements synchronized, their silence deafening. They did not speak. They did not rage. They simply advanced, relentless, inevitable. Fire leapt into the air and unleashed a pulse of memory. Not fire, but pure recollection. Golden light washed over the chamber, and for a moment the hunters faltered. Their forms wavered. Some dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as if remembering who they once were. But the effect faded quickly. The silence returned, stronger this time. "They are learning," Dale said, backing toward the gate. Alara nodded. "They feed on our hesitation." She turned to the mirror gate. Its surface swirled faster now, showing flashes, not just of other worlds, but of moments from their own past. She saw herself standing beside a human commander under a red sun. She saw Dale as a child, listening to his grandfather's stories. She saw Vire as a hatchling curled in her hands, his first breath warm against her palm. The gate was not just a weapon, it was a witness. Dale grabbed her arm. "We have to choose, now." She looked at him. "You know what must be done." "I do," he said. "And it is not you staying behind?" Before she could argue, he stepped toward the gate. His hand reached out not to touch it but to hover just above its surface. The light responded, swirling around his fingers like water. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Fulfilling the pact," he said. The hunters surged forward. Fire roared and launched himself into their path, his body a blur of black and gold. Claws tore through armor, teeth shattered rods, but he could not stop them all. Dale closed his eyes and spoke words in a language he had never learned but somehow knew. Words of binding, of balance, of blood. The gate flared white. Alara felt it then, a pull in her chest deep and undeniable. The pact was not just between her and Dale. It was between them and the gate. And the gate demanded a choice. Stay or go, live or anchor. She ran to him. "You cannot, I can," he said, opening his eyes. "And I will. You are the keeper. I am the bridge." Bridges do not stay. They connect. Tears welled in her silver eyes, something she had not felt in centuries. "You do not have to do this. Someone does," he said softly. "And it cannot be you. Your people need you. The future needs you. I am just a man with a name and a memory. You are more," she whispered. "Maybe," he said, "but this is enough." He turned fully to the gate and placed both hands on its surface. Light erupted not outward but inward, sucking the green mist, the silence, the hunter's presence into its core. The creatures screamed, not in pain but in recognition. One by one their forms dissolved, not into dust but into light, faces appearing briefly before vanishing into the swirl. A woman with braided hair, a boy with freckles, a pilot with a broken helmet. They were not enemies. They were echoes, and the gate was giving them peace. Fire landed beside Alara, his body trembling, his glow dimming. He looked at Dale, then at her, and let out a soft, mournful sound. The gate stabilized. The chamber fell silent. Dale stood within the ring of stones, his body outlined in white light. He turned to her, his gray eyes calm. "Go," he said. "Build what we remembered." She shook her head. "I will not leave you. You must," he said. "The gate needs an anchor, and I am already part of it. I can feel it. I am not dying. I am becoming." She stepped forward, but the light pushed her back gently like a hand on her chest. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them we stood together. Tell them we remembered." Alara fell to her knees, her hand reaching toward him. "Dale, please," he smiled. Just like the first time, and then he was gone. Not vanished, but woven into the gate itself. His shape faded, but his presence remained, humming in the air like a song just out of hearing. Vire pressed against her side, his warmth a small comfort in the sudden emptiness. Alara stayed there for a long time, her head bowed, her breath slow. The gate pulsed softly behind her. Steady now. Safe. Finally she rose. She walked to the edge of the chamber and placed her palm on the wall. Runes lit up beneath her touch, spreading outward like roots. Deep in the planet's core, ancient systems awakened. Shields rose. Barriers sealed. The hunters were gone, not defeated but unmade. She turned and walked back through the corridors, Vire at her heels. The ruins above were quiet. The sky was clear. The twin moons shone down on a world that had just been given a second chance. When she reached the surface, the human crew waited. They had seen the light. They had felt the shift. They did not ask where Dale was. They knew. Alara looked at them, her silver eyes dry now, her voice steady. "We rebuild," she said. And they nodded. In the days that followed, they worked, not as survivors but as founders. They cleared the ash from the gardens. They repaired the fountains. They sang songs in two tongues. Fire soared above, his scales shimmering with starlight, his fire now used to warm, not to burn. Alara stood often at the edge of the plaza, looking toward the sealed vault.
She did not speak to the gate.
She did not need to. She could feel him in the wind, in the hum of the stone, in the quiet moments between breaths. He had not left. He had become part of the world they saved. And when the first green shoot pushed through the ash near the old archway, she knelt and touched it gently. "For you," she whispered. Somewhere deep below, the gate hummed in reply. Spring came to the dead world not with a shout but with a sigh. Green shoots pushed through the ash near the old fountains. Vines crept up the broken arches, their leaves edged in silver as if the earth itself remembered the ones who once walked there. The twin moons still hung in the sky, but their light no longer felt cold. It felt like watchfulness, like promise. Alara stood at the edge of the newly cleared plaza, her bare feet resting on warm stone. Her cloak, once tattered and gray, had been mended with threads spun from Veer's shed scales, shimmering black strands that caught the sunlight like liquid night. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon, not for hunters but for signs of life, and life was returning. Birds she had not seen in centuries now nested in the high ruins. Small creatures with iridescent fur darted through the underbrush. Even the wind carried a different song, one of growth, not grief. Fire circled above, no longer the small dragon who once coiled at her feet. The Mirror Gate's awakening had changed him. His wings now stretched wide enough to shade a house. His scales gleamed with starlight even in daylight, and his fire burned with the warmth of memory, not destruction. He landed beside her with a soft thud, his golden eyes bright, his breath warm against her arm. She placed a hand on his snout. "You feel it too," she said. He rumbled low in his chest, a sound that meant yes. Behind them, the human camp had become something more, not just a base but a village. Wooden frames rose where stone had fallen. Gardens bloomed with both earth seeds and elvish flora. Children, human children, ran through the streets laughing, their voices echoing where silence once ruled. Among them walked elders who taught old words and young ones who learned to listen to the stone. Alara had not planned this. She had only meant to survive, but survival had grown into something else, something like hope. Dale's crew had stayed, not because they were stranded, but because they chose to. Their ship, the Astra Lee, now sat repaired but grounded, its hull wrapped in flowering vines. They called this place New Vow, a name spoken in both tongues. Alara walked toward the center of the plaza, where a single tree now grew, its bark smooth and silver, its leaves shaped like tiny hands. Beneath it stood a stone carved with names: Dale, Luna, Maya, Claire, Noelle, and many others, human and elf, known and lost. It was not a memorial. It was a reminder. She knelt before it, not in sorrow but in thanks. "You kept your word," she whispered. The wind stirred the leaves. For a moment she felt a presence, not a voice but a knowing, like a hand resting on her shoulder. She smiled. Fire lay down beside her, his great head resting on his claws. He closed his eyes, content. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Alara taught the children how to read the runes in the stone, how to hear the pulse of the planet. The humans taught her how to plant seeds that would feed a village, how to build roofs that would hold against rain. They did not speak of the war often, but they honored it in small ways, in the way they greeted each other with open palms, in the songs they sang at dusk, in the shared meals under twin moons. One evening, as the sky turned deep violet, a ship appeared on the horizon. Not jagged, not green, not silent. It was sleek, silver, bearing the crest of the United Earth Alliance, a symbol Alara had not seen since the last great silence. It descended slowly, landing beyond the ridge with grace and caution. Alara did not fear it. She had sent word weeks ago, using an old beacon deep in the ruins. She had told them what happened, what was remembered, what was restored. Now they had come to see for themselves. She walked to meet them, Vire at her side, her steps calm. The ramp lowered. A woman stepped out, tall, with short brown hair and eyes that held both caution and curiosity. She wore the blue uniform of an Alliance envoy, but her hands were empty. Alara stopped a few paces away. "You came?" she said. "We did," the woman replied. "I am Cora. We received your message. We did not believe it at first." "Believe your eyes," Alara said. Cora looked past her, to the village, to the green fields, to the children playing near the silver tree. Her expression softened. "It is real," she whispered. "It is," Alara said, "and it is fragile. Your people forgot once. Do not let them forget again. Cora nodded slowly. We will not. The records are already being rewritten. The pact is being restored to the archives. Your name, your people's name, will be spoken again. Good, Elara said. But names are not enough. Memory must be lived, not just written. I understand, Cora said. And we would like to stay, to learn. To help. Elara studied her. You may. But know this world is not yours to claim. It is ours to share. Cora bowed her head slightly. That is all we ask. As the new visitors settled in, Elara returned to the plaza. Night had fallen. The twin moons cast their light over the silver tree. Fire lay curled around its base, his breath slow and deep. She stood there for a long time, watching the stars. Then, from the edge of the shadows, a figure emerged. It was not solid, not fully. It shimmered like heat over stone, shaped like a man with storm-gray eyes and quiet hands. He did not speak. He simply stood, looking at her, his form glowing faintly with the same light as the gate. Elara's breath caught. Dale. He smiled, just for a moment. You are still here, she said. Part of me always will be. His voice came not through air but through feeling, like a thought shared between old friends. Is it enough? She asked. It has to be, he replied. But look what you built. You did not wait for me. You remembered for both of us. She looked around, at the lights in the windows, at the laughter drifting on the wind, at Veer's steady presence. We remembered together, she said. He stepped closer, though his feet made no sound. And now others will remember too. Will they? She asked. They already are, he said. You gave them a reason. He began to fade, his edges softening into starlight. Do not go, she whispered. I am not going, he said. I am becoming part of what comes next. And then he was gone. But the warmth remained. Elara knelt then, not in command, not in grief, but in promise. She pressed her palm to the earth. Beneath her fingers she felt it, the pulse of the planet, the hum of the gate, the echo of 1,000 voices saying one thing. We stand together. Veer lifted his head and let out a soft, rumbling purr. The sound carried across the plaza, into the village, into the stars. Somewhere, far away, another ship turned toward the twin moons. And the story began again.